This video demonstrates how one might integrate WorP as part of the workflow during proposal development. I will play like I'm writing a proposal, iterating between Overleaf and WorP to refine the tables that I need for my proposal. The first thing that I'd like to do is to try to get this table into portrait mode, comment out the code that makes it go sideways. Let's compile and see what we've got. Clearly eating into our margins, but we do have a little bit of white space to play with. Let's try shrinking this first column. For all of the WorP tabular files, comments are placed identifying the relationship between each line of code and the column it represents. The titles column would be this line right here. Let's make this number a little bit smaller. We compile. Okay, that's about perfect. Now let's remove this white space for the task assignments column, which is this line right here. It go a little bit more. Well, it fits fairly well within the margins. Kind of call that good enough. The next thing that I'd like to do is to add another person. Let's suppose that the person will be an international collaborator. And because that person is not going to be funded by our proposal, we don't have to fill out a biosketch file. Let's add this person in WorPT under the personnel and FTE. We just add a new line at the bottom or wherever we want it. I'm going to put it at the bottom. I'm going to start filling out this new row with the new person's information. Leave the biosketch Google field ID blank because we don't need one since they are a collaborator. Because this person's institution is not in the US, we leave this box unchecked and we don't check either of the boxes here. Because the person is a collaborator, we don't have to have a biosketch or funding status. Likewise, we will leave the travel empty or we could put zeros there. If this person were funded through our proposal, we would consider having some travel. Now, let's go to tasks and include this person in our project. Note how the script automatically put another 4 here under the not funded by this proposal column because this person is a collaborator and the script recognized that role. Because we have added another person, we can subtract some of the work weeks from the other people so that the level of effort is redistributed. Now that we have incorporated this new colleague into the project, let's go back to personnel and FTEs and write up the narrative describing the role of this person. Note that if any of the original persons had been removed from a project that they had originally been part of, then these two columns would have changed accordingly and would manually have to change the narratives that describe the role. In this particular case, I didn't actually remove anyone. I just reduced the number of hours that they were involved. I don't need to change anything up here. The script puts a list of all the tasks that this individual is associated with. So we will use this information to write our narrative. I'm going to step away, write the narrative, and when we come back, you will see these words in these two columns. I'm back. I have written words for both of these columns related to role descriptions for our new colleague. I will remind you that whenever you are writing these descriptions, always keep in mind that you are writing in LaTeX. One other thing that I would like to point out, the number of FTEs for the new person have been placed under the correct column. The green money bag column would be FTEs that are funded by this proposal. For this new person who is a collaborator and not a funded co-investigator, that value is 0 for each of the 3 years. One other thing to note, I assess whether a person is a collaborator or a co-investigator, whether or not the level of effort exceeds 0.1 FTE, just a personal rule of thumb. Note that for this new person, we exceed that number for both years 2 and 3. If this were a real proposal, it would probably go back to tasks and reduce the number of work weeks assigned to this person, tasks that have coverage in years 2 and 3, and then redistribute that work amongst the other people so that the total number of FTEs per year does meet that goal of 0.1 or less. Obviously, there could be exceptions to that rule. Well, now that we have finished adding this person to the WorPT sheet, generate LaTeX tables. The script has now finished. Now we can pop over to our Overleaf project and ingest the new tables. Before we leave the worksheet, I'd like to reiterate that if the new person we had added was a funded collaborator or one of the PIs, then we would have had to create a biosketch file for this person as well and get that filled out and, check one or more of these two boxes here. By definition, the person would have a U.S. institution affiliation, and we would also check this box. Let's go to Overleaf and do the thing we should now be pretty familiar with to ingest the new files. Our beautiful table is now broken again because the addition of this new person has caused this line in the task assignments column to kind of spill over into the second line. What we now need to do is widen this column. Okay, so that's about as wide as this column is going to have to be in order to accommodate all of these task assignments. One thing to keep in mind when you are making task assignments on the worksheet is this table looks best if you can limit the number of people assigned to a particular task to 3 people or less. I know often you just can't do that, but if you can, it allows this table to be put in portrait mode rather than landscape mode. One other thing I would like to point out is this new person appears in red font. And remember that red font indicates the person is from a non-US institution. The only other option we have at this point in order to get this table to fit back in the margins would be to shorten title or task B1. And then we can narrow this column, and I think that it'll fit. To be able to modify this title, we need to go back to WorPT, the tasks page, and then work on shortening this title. We are writing in LaTeX, so always keep that in mind. Doubt that that's going to be enough, but let's try it. As predicted, not quite enough. So we're going to have to be a little more severe in shortening that title. I think we probably got it after we take in all of this white space. Now there's a good looking table. Fits in the margins, no spillover into a second line, looks good. One thing that we forgot to do is to copy paste the new caption. The script incorporates information from the work pages into the caption, and you need to go back and retrieve that information. To be specific, at the very end here, you'll see that identities are made. You'll note that we don't see the new person because we didn't copy the new caption from the file. The first time incorporating a file, you would copy this entire thing, then uncomment whatever lines you needed. But since everything will be the same that we already have in our document, except for this new caption, I'll just replace the caption. And it starts out with being commented out, so you do have to remove that % at the beginning. Note that the new person is now listed. Let's recompile and see what the new caption looks like. Perfect. The new person is now showing up. Another change that I'd like to make is in the biosketch section. Note that right now, biosketches come one right after another. I like to put them on separate pages. I'd also like to use that same format for the current and pending section as well, because right now, one person comes right after the second person. And in this case, it looks kind of ugly because there's a page break right in the middle of a person's grant funding status. Go back to work, personnel and FTE. And then we check one or both of the boxes at the top to appear on separate pages. For biosketch, I want those to appear and also funding status. Let's generate the new tables. We now have biosketches on separate pages, as well as the current and pending funding section. During the course of writing, you might realize that a biosketch file needs to be updated. Someone might want to put a new paper that they just got published or whatever into their biosketch. Those kind of changes can be made in a very straightforward way, in the same manner that we've made all these other changes. Let's say that the PI realizes there's a couple of new additions he would like to make to his biosketch. I could either go straight to the biosketch file, or I could use WorP to get to it. If you have typed things in so that there is a URL link, you can just get to the biosketch files in this way, which is very convenient. Always remember to check the box for anything you want to show up. Go back to WorP and then generate the LaTeX files. Before I hit recompile, I just want you to see what the changes are. So this is what the biosketch file looks like before. So there were 2 publications. And when we hit the recompile, you can see all the other publications are now listed, and the new addition to the awards is also there. The last thing that I'd like to do, which really should have happened much earlier on, is to change the title of our WorP file from its default title when we copied it from GitHub to something that's more descriptive and will be more easily identified in the future. I usually title them whatever the title of the proposal is. And I like to attach a date to it as well. Let's take a moment to summarize. We start the proposal development with WorP, where the project-related schedule and proposal team are defined. We then click the button in WorP to generate the LaTeX files. One copy of the files resides on Google Drive, while another is sent to GitHub, the same repository that Overleaf has already been linked to. We perform GitHub syncing through Overleaf's menu to update the WorP files that are cloned down in our Overleaf project area. We then copy-paste the commented out parts that appear at the top of the WorP files down into our proposal. These lines of code are what insert the files into our document, as well as give us the ability to alter the appearance of the WorP-generated table. If additional changes are needed to the content, we need to make those modifications within WorP. So we return to whatever WorP file that is associated with the needed change, make the necessary edits, and then we start the whole cycle over again until we're happy with the proposal. And with that, we conclude the WorP How To series of videos.